You made it very easy to be absorbed in the story and the character. Um, yeah, you do a great job of setting the scene and using lots of like sensory details to just build the stage, and that makes it really easy to like just think in the terms of the character. So it was nerve-wracking in the sense of like I wasn't worried about am I doing this right? I was worried about um like staying alive. Like I was worried about I was literally worried about not disappearing into my own subconsciousness. Like I have to get out of this. I felt this impending sense of I am this close. I need to be free.
And that was the big drive for this, because when we originally like structured how we were going to do like the first couple episodes, we had talked about doing more of a mental scape psyche kind of thing. Um, and as I was building out the session, I realized I'm like, Reeve needs an origin. Like there has to be an understanding of Reeve's own fight to come to fruition.
Mhm. Yeah. To lend some extra, since there isn't like a huge backstory to Reeve,
Mhm.
there really can't be a huge one other than what was Quinn's secret desire that Reeve spawns from. And it is that guarded longing for power and fear of failure and how those things intertwine in Quinn's psyche.
Yes.
So, yeah, getting to explore that somewhat physically for Reeve, I think, is the perfect backstory. And yeah, you're right. It was just an awesome origin story. I was just trying to do my best to, like, I think, interact with that in the way that brings it to fruition. Because honestly, I had no idea where we were going with this whole session, um, which is new for me, having written the first two.
Yeah.
So just wanting to, like, kind of take direction, follow the lead of the story. I don't want to like go off the rails or anything like that. Um, which I don't think is anything I needed to be worried about in the first place, honestly. But I don't have a ton of experience as a player, so
Right.
I think a little extra self-conscious about like, am I being a good player? Um, Point being though, like again, just getting back to like what I said earlier, you made it very easy for those kind of self-conscious thoughts to just fade into the background as the further we got into it, and the characters' decisions just became my own, and it was really easy to pick up the Reeve torch where you kind of left it off because it's yeah, that was really well thought out and well crafted. It was so much fun.
Yeah. No, I like there was definitely a little bit of a pressure with it too, because you are such a talented storyteller and DM, that I was like,
Thank you.
okay, how am I going to tap into this side of me? Because the other thing that I think, like, I traditionally DM for kids.
Mhm.
I DM for kids and new players. So I'm very used to constructing a more guided path for players, and kind of how to, like, all right, how do we manage chaos when we have a group of 12-year-olds that are like, let's burn everything? Or we have new players that are like, I'm really not comfortable with this. And how do we make sure that it is something that they can feel more immersed into?
Mhm.
So I feel like I really did try to like play to my strengths. Like, what do I know how to do, and how do I get to stretch myself into doing more of the storytelling that I don't get to typically do?
Yeah.
So this opportunity was something that I was really excited about, but I was super nervous because I'm like, oh shit, okay, I got Nick's shoes to fill. How do I do this?
No, I feel like I have a lot to live up to now because the interpretation of like internal conflict into external setting is something that I feel like I would struggle to write, and it just seemed like it came so naturally to you. The settings were just I think, obviously chosen specifically, but were so kind of uniquely crafted to the character, and it was just so fitting to the story. I felt like I was just like lost wandering through somebody else's, school grounds, and it was eerie and it was unsettling. But at the same time, it felt like it should have been comforting because I felt like I was two people at once, and I don't know, it was just. I think your experience as a DM is kind of uniquely crafted to our current story too,
Mhm.
because we've talked about before, like we kind of know where the story is going, overarching, right?
Right.
So we're somewhat on rails a little bit. Um, so even if I were to like take you off rails, I think you've got a toolbox full of ways to kind of keep us back in the realm of where we need to be,
Mhm.
just from all of your time spent like rallying kids and newbies at a table, you know?
Rallying kids specifically.
Right.
um, no, and it definitely like we almost went off the rails for a moment. I would really wonder, it's like, oh shit, this is gonna be real short if we do this. Where do we pivot?
Was it the atrium?
Yep.
Okay. But yeah, perfect pivot. You're like, oh, you've got that pull, which is something we've already referenced. So
Hmm.
it's not like that came out of nowhere. That was like fantastic, like improv storytelling, just using stuff that we've already kind of built into our world. And that is, I guess, maybe now the canonical first instance of that feeling. But
Hmm. Yeah, and that was kind of one of the things that I thought about too, because planning for unexpected with children, like, okay, how do we keep this like on track? I was like, I already know that we have established that there is this weird tug between Reeve and the patron.
mm,
Um, and even though we referenced the tug in that second session, the pull this time was more about Quinn's psyche,
mm.
and specifically the avatar.
That was an interesting concept.
The thing with that I had thought through with the avatar is we are dealing with someone with Quinn that they have dissociative identity disorder,
Mm,
which usually is the result of some kind of trauma. We have the trauma established from Quinn's first death. Um, and I wanted people to wonder if maybe this was another alter forming and
mm.
also giving us the opportunity to play with that later.
I was wondering if it was another altar forming, and as Reeve was about to panic, which is why I like tried to dismiss it as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. So it's
Uh,
yeah, really playing with that. Like, okay, what happens when you have somebody who already has new alternative personalities that have been steadily forming in their psyche and that are just
mm,
ready to break through? And how do we set it up? Like, okay, we have one that is now formed and is getting ready to come to fruition. Is there a backup? Do they have a copy? Or are there other alters hiding in this mental scape?
yeah, which is kind of scary if you're an individual, and if you're an individual in an individual. Um, when you first introduced the avatar, I thought it was kind of representative of just the struggle between Reeve and Quinn. I
Mhm.
thought the transforming was just kind of back and forth between the two different halves of the same coin. And then when they came back is when it finally clicked for me that this isn't just Reeve and Quinn. This is possibilities for Quinn. And that was when I was like, okay, Reeve needs to assert some dominance here now. Like taking control of the ship. Quinn, you're not in charge anymore. Like Reeve is walking out of here.
Yeah. And I think that was something I really love that you did with Reeve's character, because we had already kind of established like Reeve is definitely somebody who, while incredibly chaotic, is wants to embrace the power, has no problem asserting their dominance. And I think you slipped into that with such ease and it was so effortless. I was like really blown away. I was like, oh my God, it's so weird getting to see Reeve on the other side.
So when I was thinking earlier today, I kind of expecting to play both of them today. I was thinking about what is the real difference between the two of them beyond just class and abilities and whatnot, but what are the kind
Mhm.
of personality trait differences between the two of them? And it is that like confidence, self-doubt,
Mhm.
fear of failure holding you back versus feeling free for the first time and seizing everything that you believe is rightfully yours are kind of the separating factors for those characters in my mind. So I kind of knew coming into this that Reeve was going to be fast acting, decision making, even if it's chaotic, if it's on a whim, if it's what feels right in the moment, even if it's
Mhm.
wrong, making a choice, sticking to it, going with it. Um, and no second guessing. Just this is the way we do it.
Yeah, chucking the
Whereas
journal.
Quinn, yeah, I mean
Yes.
that kind of just came to me in the moment, but it was a matter of like Reeve, I think, understood then that it was and has always been fear holding Quinn back, self doubt holding Quinn back, and Reeve is the answer to that. Reeve is the solution. Reeve is how they, as a physical being, overcome that. And that was Reeve just being like I'm steering the ship now. It's all or nothing. You're in the deep end. We're doing this. This is power. I'm in control. Um, it's like time to sink or swim.
Yeah. No, I love that. I thought that was like just pure character genius. I was so like, fuck yes. So it and that's kind of one of the things that I really like too is just like when you do give other people the autonomy to make the choices for their characters and what they're going to do with it. Um yeah, but you tapped into that so quickly and I was so like, okay, yeah, let's fuck it up.
Well, again, you made it really easy because I feel like there were a lot of opportunities throughout that. Like you said, we didn't have a combat encounter, but it was in a fully role play focused session where there was a ton of opportunity to engage with the character in internally in different ways, um, which is obviously going to continue to come up throughout this campaign because it's going to be full of internal conflict. But um, those moments to me felt more stressful than had it just been a combat session. They felt more meaningful than had it just been combat. Not that combat isn't fun, also, it's just a matter of
Right.
these, yeah, just seem like they have so much more weight to them. Every choice, like the just chucking the journal thing. As soon as I was doing it, I was like, oh, this could actually be bad, but too late now.
I mean, we'll see what happens. But I really like that too. And just what you expressed right now, like it felt like the choices that you made during this could have consequences. These choices were meant to be heavy during this entire piece. Like this was not meant to be like, oh, we're just going to make a decision like on a whim and you know, like consequences. Like no, there's definitely going to be things that will probably happen down the road that we will later see. Um, what they are, we don't know. So, but I, and I think both of us are very much this way that when we do have combat type encounters, both of us are very strategic and thoughtful about how we handle those encounters. I know that you and I have talked about it. Like one of, at least as a player, one of my big pet peeves is when people are not prepping for their turn during combat. And I'm like, nope, if it
Yeah,
is not your turn, start looking at your sheet and figuring out what you're going to do.
right. Keep it moving.
Yeah. I mean, because that's one of the things that I always, when I play with other groups, and if I see people like scrolling on Instagram when we're middle of a combat session, and I'm like, guys, I need you to focus. You're
Right.
up. You're on deck.
We're all about to die. Come on.
um, but even during the one shot that I ran for your birthday, I could tell like, oh yeah, Nick is incredibly like thoughtful about what he's going to do during combat and during that kind of encounter. So how could I spice this up into a situation where you don't necessarily have the time to strategize, but you know that there's going to be impact down the line?
Mhm. Yeah, you did that. I felt the whole time I felt like I don't have time to think here, but I know everything I do is going to affect me for the rest of my life. So,
Well, and it was kind of the fun thing too, because, like I said, when I was putting this together, originally I was going to start with Quinn. And when I was writing out that session and getting my notes prepared for it, I was like, we need to flip the script on this.
mhm.
Um, it felt important to actually understand the impact of what Reeve had to go through to get there and where they are now. And I think it'll help clarify a lot of Reeve's character decisions later too.
Yeah, with this as an origin, oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I'm excited to see what comes next. We're doing essentially a Quinn focused session next. Is that
Yep.
right? Okay.
So next we'll be doing the one that I originally wrote that was supposed to be for today.
Okay.
But when I was writing it too, like I thought about it after I had wrote out the sessions, and I know I had messaged you like, "Hey, I want to run the next two sessions because I have this great idea." And I very intentionally did not tell you like we were going to start with Reeve. I thought about it, and then I was like, no, I want Nick to actually have the opportunity to immerse yourself in this character and not have the ability to plan it out.
Yeah. No, I literally had to like come to life as a character the way Reeve was coming to life.
Because that's exactly what it was. I was like, this is it. This is how we figure out who Reeve is.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. A little devious also, but cool.
I have my moments.
Yeah.
It's like that. Oh gosh, what did something my kiddo said to me the other day? Like they had made a comment to me about the type of parent I was, and I was like, "What?" And they're like, "You're like an authoritative parent. You let me have my own choices, but you reinforce the consequences of it."
A fuck around and find out parent. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I also believe that is a huge impact on storytelling too. Like, and it's been a long time since I've actually gotten to do like any writing or just story building on my own, besides like the little mini one shots that I do here and there. So getting to tap into that is really fun. But it's also like you have to think of the DM too as that narrator. They're the one that is going to eventually guide this story and help the player figure out where they need to go. So, how do you narrate the story in the right way that's going to give them the option of choices, but also make sure that those key elements are being told?
Yeah, it's kind of like the DM's dirty secret, right? That like
Mhm.
if you are prepared accordingly, you can get your players in front of anybody that
Mhm.
you need them to be in front of, right? Because any bad guy can appear in any tavern or inn or city, whatever they need to be. If you're, if you can improv that appropriately.
Yeah.
Um, it's just being able to do it in a way that feels like their choices are what led them to where they are, and paint the picture or write the story, tell the story in the way that feels as though their decisions are what brought them to their consequences. Um, I think that's kind of like the most fun part of being a DM is like not doling out the consequences, but sorting through and finding the effects of the causes
Right.
of the
Well, and
player's choices, even if you've kind of predetermined some of them, still connecting the dots.
yeah, and I think that's one of the things too. Like when people talk about consequences, we got to remember consequences aren't always negative. They're not always bad. Sometimes consequences are just the circumstance of the situation. They may be good, they may be bad, or they might be neutral. Um, I mean, that's again parenting reference bullshit. Sorry, guys, this is my life. But I always say, I was like, is this choice going to be a good consequence or a bad consequence?
Yeah,
Um, and getting to pull that into the storytelling too is really fun to see, like, oh, how is this going to shape out, what are we going to do? And that is one of the fun parts of DMing, is like getting to see, like, okay, how do we get to tell this story now that we've had these choices made, and where does the story go from here? How does this choice impact what is going to happen down the line?
yeah.
I also get a little sad sometimes when I prep certain things. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a really cool thing, but maybe we won't get to it. And that's always one of the challenges of DMing too, because there was definitely the hall where the lecture halls were. It's
Mm.
called the Echoing Lecture Hall. And I
Man.
was like, oh, this is going to be really cool. But I also like came to terms like, we will probably not do exploration of every single hall. Um, but I had it set that in my head, you needed to at least go to the library, and then you could go to the atrium. If you decided to explore anything else or any other clues came up in the library, that would open whatever pathway. But it was
Okay.
definitely one of those things that I was like, okay.
Yeah, I knew there was probably more going on that I
Mhm.
would have liked to have seen. Reeve was telling me I don't belong here. Like,
Mhm.
this is Quinn's place. I need to get out of here. That was like Reeve's first thought was, fuck this library. Fuck this school. No more studying. It's time to get out in the world.
Yeah, and I love that because it's the essence of who Reeve is. Like the whole part, like you have to do it.
Yeah, we'll see. Actions have consequences, right?
Actions have consequences. I very excited. The chucking the journal into the archive of the unknown, it was really fun. I'm still
I
like
hope,
spinning from that. I was like,
yeah, I hope that comes back to bite us in the ass somehow.
it probably will. Um, but I think the thing too that I'm really excited to see is how we've now both had the opportunity to establish our DM styles and how that's going to mesh going down the line and how we're going to pick up where the other left off now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of nice that we don't have to have well, I guess it would kind of depend on where the Quinn story goes before we
Mhm.
shift back over again, but it doesn't feel like we have to have um consistent we pick up from here, we start off from here. Like our first two ran consecutively.
Mhm.
Um, three might run into four. I don't know. Four might happen entirely independently of three. And then we'll see where we pick up with five. So like getting to bounce back and forth at different kind of points along the story.
Yeah.
Not that we're doing a ton of time hopping, but a little bit. And yeah, like you said, getting to jump back and forth between our styles and allowing our styles to guide the parts of the stories that we're telling, like kind of playing to our strengths a little bit.
Mhm.
I'm really excited to see what comes out of this practice, this process. Just because I think we have a lot of things in common, but we both do a lot quite differently. Also, we prep
Yeah.
differently, we plan differently, we write stories very differently. So to see how we kind of just weave back and forth around this central theme over time is going to be really cool.
Yeah. I think it's going to be very exciting, and eventually I don't know, we'll have to do like a notes comparison thing about like, oh yeah, this is what I do when I prep and this is how I figure out like where the story's going to take us. Um I do feel like this last one, I was very fortunate that I just had this like epiphany of what came to me. I was like,
Yeah.
wait a second. It's like one of those like late night, like, oh my God, I just thought of this. And like you're rushing, taking notes on your phone really quick and being like, okay, save this and then come back to it later.
That eureka moment.
hmm Yeah. I know that like one of the things that I started doing when I was initially studying art and studying storytelling, uh, I actually kept a notebook next to my bed and I would just jot like whatever random shit came to me, just so that way I had a really quick reference. I could write it down. I didn't feel like I was like going, okay, I'll remember this in the morning because I never do. Or like if I would wake up and I had like a really bizarre dream and then I was like, yeah, this would be really cool to like either do a visual representation of or like expand on it and see where the story would take me down the line. And I think that's one of the things too is remembering that it is okay to just capture those bursts of inspiration when you have them.
Yeah, and then apply it when
Mhm.
or where you can. Especially I feel like when it comes to I mean, I suppose this applies to all storytelling, but when it comes to D&D, there's so many possibilities that you can get so much inspiration that things can go into any bucket. They don't all fit for the story you want to tell at the moment necessarily. So it's kind of like you have to write everything down and then just remember to reference it at some point because it might be useful in some campaign or some story.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's always kind of like I'm always curious how other DMs do that. Like if they have just like an archive that they keep somewhere, or they're just like, hey, this would be really cool, and they just kind of like jot it down or whatever. So I'm always really curious about how other DMs do that. Um, I just kind of reverted back to like my old college know-how and notebook by my bed, and that way I can just.
Yeah.
I mean, like I've got a plethora of notebooks that I can choose from. I wish I was cool and I could say that, like, hey, these are all books. No, these are just a bunch of empty notebooks.
Scribbles.
Yeah, scribbles. Some of them are sketchbooks, though. I'll rely on that. I was like, some of them are sketchbooks.
We'll have to do a sketch reveal at some point, by
Oh
the
my
way.
god, yeah. And unfortunately, my sketchbook right now is downstairs. But if people really want to see like some of the art stuff that I've been working on behind the scenes, I totally open to it. Maybe we'll put a poll on our Instagram when we start going live more often, and people can say, yeah, we want to see character art or whatnot. I also love seeing other people's interpretations
I'm people. I want to see character art.
on people. Yeah, no, I would be so curious though to see like other folks' interpretations and stuff like that. I do have like a couple of trades in progress that I'm almost like, hey, do you guys want to do like some character art for this thing that I'm doing with another friend? Just to kind of
That'd be
like see
cool.
that. So
Yeah,
definitely picking brains. I'm like, I'll trade art for art. You give me some character art, I'll give you some dice.
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm here for it.
Mm. But yeah, other final thoughts.
Final thought. Well, I guess for one, I want to say thank you. That was a hell of a story. Like I've told you a couple of times today already, I don't get to be a player very often. So for me, it's a real pleasure to get the opportunity to just like explore a character. Um, I love acting. I think of a big part of being a player in D&D is just improv, acting, and having fun with people that you are comfortable enough to do that around. So yeah, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to do something as goofy and fun and weird and creative as this, and to get to share the responsibilities, the duties, and the joy. It's just a pleasure. So thanks for the hard work. I appreciate it.
Oh, like Nick, you know how to speak to every DM I know. No, thank you. I'm not gonna lie, this was definitely nerve wracking. I'm so glad that we have, I don't know, a good camaraderie, a good flow, like the ability to be comfortable that I'm like, yeah, I can tell this story and I know it's going to be okay. And if I fuck up, we'll fix it in the post credits or edits later. So it's all fine. But getting the opportunity to tap into something I haven't been able to express or share has been super exciting and reinvigorating for me. And I think that's really what it is I guess my final thought is it is exciting to come together as two storytellers and get to encourage one another, but also push one another to do something that maybe takes us out of our comfort zone. So, very
Yeah.
exciting.
Here's to hoping we can make some other people uncomfortable and have fun along the way too.
I mean, I always say this, get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Well, that was a good one. I can't wait for the next.
For sure. All right. So, I guess we'll see y'all next time.
Yeah. See you when we're someone else.
See you when we're someone else.